In this lesson, we'll begin working with structure for our basic roof form. All right, so now that we have our mesh in place and we have a real good understanding of how this is constructed and how important it is for us to be able to manipulate the spacing and the UV grids, let's start working with some structure to really bring this thing to life. So I'm going to click on this real quick, and I want to see my mesh, and I also want to see my nodes. So what we need to do here is, now that we've explored the different options for patterns, let's take that approach with patterns. Let's create a structure that is a pattern, and let's import that into this, and let's create structure without actually having to go through all the headache of creating each intricate little part. That sounds great to me. So to do that, we need to open up a new family folder. So I'm going to go here to the top, and we're going to go new, and we're going to go with family. We're going to create a family, or basically a pattern that's really going to host the structure of our roof here. So there's two options we have once we open this. When we're working with panels or anything glass related like that, we can work with curtain wall panels. So we have curtain wall panel, and then we have curtain wall panel pattern based. This is the one we want to work with, because once we create this family, we can actually load it into our project, onto our mass as a pattern, and our structure will be in place with just a few clicks. So I'm going to go OK and open. And we have our plane here set here, and we've got a few adaptive points. So what we need to do now is basically create the basic skeleton of our structure, bring it in, test it out, make sure it works, and go from there. So as I mentioned in previous lessons, when I first started out, it's really good practice to always set your reference plane when you're setting points or doing some new moves. Otherwise, you're going to have floating points, and you're going to find it really frustrating when things don't snap into place. So I'm going to go ahead and set my reference plane. And basically at each one of these points here, we are going to place a point, and we're going to offset it and create the structure for our roof. So I'm going to set this work plane, and I'm simply going to place a model point right at that point. And I'm going to do the exact same thing for the rest of the other three. Set the horizontal plane, and I'm going to go with my model point element there and place it there. Set and place my point. Set and place my point. Once you have your point placed and you begin going through this rhythm, you really don't have to go back and choose point again, unless you're going to switch from a point to maybe a line. But as long as you're using that same tool, you really don't have to jump back. It'll actually save you a couple of extra moves. So now that I have all those in place, we now need to bump these up so they create basically the frame for the glass panel, and then holding that glass panel will be more structure coming down here. So to do that, we could go and try to locate each one of these points, and I can simply try to tab my way through and try to find that one point we just placed, or I can filter it all out and simply move what we just placed. So I'm going to highlight everything, and at the top right, I love this button here. It's my filter button, and it's going to let me filter anything that's in the area that I have highlighted. So again, I just want my reference points to be highlighted, so I'm going to unselect those, keep my reference points checked, apply and OK. And now, without pushing anything else, I'm going to go straight to my properties browser. And now I can create an offset. Now this is going to be basically the depth of my structural system. So it's going to be basically the top of the framing that holds in my glass panel to the bottom of the struts that are actually going to be holding up the roof in the panel. So I need to take that into account and think about head height and things like that. So for my structure, I'm going to go ahead and set this to maybe 8 feet. It might be a little overkill. But again, we are in a conceptual phase, and if I need to make that change, I can make that change very easily. So again, I'm on 8 feet for my offset. I'll click apply. And just to the right of that, there's a little rectangle here. Now, this might be hard to find if you haven't done your research or you're not too familiar with working in creating masses and working with parameters. But that little rectangle there, associate family parameter, once you click that, it's going to give you a little bit of power here. I'm going to click that, and I'm going to add parameter. And what I'm going to do is this offset distance is going to be a parameter, and as my structure is getting placed throughout my curved system, that parameter is going to be set, and I'm going to have a nice, smooth, consistent flow for my glass panels. So I'm going to name this something logical. So we'll call this one frame depth. This makes sense to me. We'll keep it as a type and we'll go OK. It's highlighted here, so I'm going to go OK there as well. So now we have our points in place. So now all we need to do is create a real basic structure of this thing using some real simple lines, and we'll drop it into the project to test it out. So I'm going to go with some model lines, and I'm going to make sure my 3D snapping's on. If I didn't have 3D snapping on, it would be really difficult getting my line set for these top ones here. So I'm just going to connect all 4 of these elements here. And now what I need to do now is create a structure that's actually going to come down to the middle here. So I'm just going to use another model line real quick that I'm getting ready to erase after I've done what I need to do with it. I just need to locate this middle line, and I'm going to place a reference point at the middle, right there. I'm going to hit modify and it'll appear. A lot of times you'll set your points and you'll notice they won't appear right when you set them. You just need to hit either set another point or hit modify and that point will appear. So now what I can do is draw in some more model lines. Keeping my 3D snapping on, I can go from this corner to the middle and up to the top. We can do the same thing on this side. So we'll go corner, bottom, next corner. And I'm going to kind of scroll around to make sure this looks good here. And really what we could do at this point is get rid of this line. I really don't need that because this structure will actually be sitting on top of a circular column, structural column, if you will, that'll actually be supporting that strut. So now that we have our basic skeleton in place, in the next lesson, we're going to bring this in to our project and see how this looks in our curved form.